Hi everyone, my name is Terri and welcome to my channel, The Pink Dumbbell Problem, and a new episode in the Friday Fact Day series where I get to talk about my work in fitness, feminism, and philosophy. And today's fact is ableism. Now, ableism is a topic and a word I've brought up a couple of times in other videos, just sort of briefly, and I did promise at one point quite a few months ago that I would just do sort of a straightforward explanation of what that is. This week, the issue of ableism, as always, has come up in the news and in the discourse, but particularly in relation to the situation going on in Ukraine. A couple of news articles that I have here, and I'll post links down below, about how it's particularly difficult to get disabled people to safety. So with that in mind, and with a lot of talk of ableism and disability issues in the discourse, I guess I'm kind of combining the Friday Fact Day and the In the Discourse series a little bit of overlap. So with that in mind, here's what ableism really is. Now, the most basic definition of this that is still in most dictionaries today is discrimination against any person who is not able-bodied. However, that's a really overly simplistic definition and really not complete by today's standards. So it's not just things like the physical barriers that make it impossible or difficult for non-able-bodied people to get into different spaces, or the things like job discrimination that they face. It's also those who are affected by mental health disorders, cognitive disabilities, learning disabilities, emotional disorders. All of those sorts of things come into play as well. When we talk about accessibility and reducing ableism, quite often that focuses on the people with physical disabilities. So people who have things like paralysis or can't access certain spaces. And then we get into discussions of things like doorways that wheelchairs can go over, or elevators where people who can't walk and take the stairs need to be able to get around a building. We also need to look at things like timeframes. Is it possible for somebody with a disability to negotiate traffic and a public transport system in the same amount of time as somebody who does not have a disability? Things like having a brain injury and maybe your memory doesn't work. I am speaking from some experience there because I had a brain injury over 30 years ago, and it took me a long time to get my short-term memory to function fully. It was well over a year. That's another example, again, of how these sorts of things affect every little aspect of life. And sometimes, unless you have that experience of embodying a disability, either a permanent or a temporary, either something congenital that you were born with, or something like in my case where I acquired a head injury, those sorts of things, if you don't experience them, you really cannot totally guess at how much of your life is affected by it. And of course, like I said, it's not just the physical things like getting around a space or getting around your city. It's other things too, like how people perceive you. And I've mentioned on this channel a few times before, I have strabismus. It's an eye condition where my right eye sometimes turns inward. And if I go a little soft in the eyes and I don't pull my eyes into focus quite as much and maybe turn my head a little bit so you don't notice it, like I often do, sitting like this. I'm not talking about strabismus in my own condition because I'm looking for feedback on my appearance or anything. I'm doing it for a couple of reasons. One is because it's very poorly understood, so it makes a good example. And two, it's the one I can speak from personal experience. And I can read up on other disabilities, but again, having not embodied that and experienced that in my own real life, I'm certainly not ever going to be the expert on it. So I'm sticking to what I know. This is a condition where it doesn't really do that much damage to my eyesight. I can function. I can wear reading glasses if my eyes get tired. I've had surgery, I've had physiotherapy, all that kind of stuff. I can still read, I can still drive a car, I can still get around like a normally sighted person. It just has a few little effects on my depth perception. I don't always know exactly where my glasses are. So things like that. It's not keeping me out of a lot of things. There's a few careers I can't do because my depth perception is not accurate. There's a few careers I can't do because my appearance is inappropriate, as I used to hear all the time. Things where you have to have a very particular look. I don't have the look. And I looked into a few of those things earlier in my teens and early 20s when I was looking at career prospects, and a lot of things were ruled out to me because of my appearance. So even though it's very subtle and you might not have even noticed it until I pointed it out, which a lot of people don't, it's still enough for people to go, something's a little off there. And they don't maybe know what it is, and they certainly don't know what the name of it is, but they just know I'm not quite what they want. Of course, being here on YouTube, all of that washes away because I get to be the producer of my own show and I get to appear on camera as myself. But it also colors how people think of me as an individual. And if you Google the R slur with cross-eyed, you'll see how common it is for people to make very inappropriate and very bold and very unscientific assumptions about my mental capacity and my intellectual capacity when my eye is not aligned forward. My case is a good example of how the actual physical condition that I have, the actual eye disease that I have, is nowhere near as problematic or damning as the way people think of people like me who have this eye condition. And I should also say, by the way, that I have a very mild condition. I've had physiotherapy, I've had surgery. It's mostly corrected. And most people can't tell I have it now. But when I was younger, before I had the surgery and all of the physio to correct it, it was not a pleasant way to live, let's put it that way. Quite often, too, strabismus is a word people don't know. They refer to cross-eyed as also lazy eye, and that's the one that I think I object the most to. People perceive lazy to be a choice, and I don't think it usually is. I think quite often there's any number of medical conditions, mental health issues that make a person appear quote unquote lazy. And in my case, it's ridiculously inaccurate and unfair as well, because I'm not lazy. I'm not refusing to control the muscles of my eye. I don't have control of those muscles to turn my eye straight out. Issues with one of my ocular nerves that causes that muscle to not be innervated correctly. And anytime we innervate our muscles, it's the brain sending a signal through the nervous system into whatever muscles are going to move whatever joints and bones of the body. Your eyes have muscles too. One of my muscles just doesn't work. The biggest thing about ableism is, again, as we're seeing in Ukraine right now, that the people who are really in the most need of help are getting quite often the least of it. We have a lot of baggage in society about the value of people with disabilities. Because we're a capitalist society, we have this idea that one has to earn their living and earn their keep and be a contributing member of society. Note the scare quotes I'm doing all over the place in this sentence. And that is a problem because, on the one hand, a lot of people with various disabilities can't get hired for a lot of jobs. Maybe they can't physically or mentally or cognitively do them, but maybe they can, and they're just not getting hired because of discriminatory assumptions. And then on the other hand, they're not earning their keep in society. They're not contributing to society in a way that really means contributing to the economy. This is why, too, we have a history in our society of people with various disabilities being put in sanitariums, being treated with torture that was disguised as medical help, all of these sorts of things that are part of a very, very ugly history of how people with disabilities, diseases, long-term injuries, short-term injuries, whatever, have been treated. And unfortunately, this is how this is playing out today in Ukraine. And by the way, that's just 2 articles that I linked down below and showed you the screenshot of. There's scads more. So there you have it, folks. Not one of my more cheerful videos. I do try to keep everything on this channel fairly upbeat as best I can. Doesn't always happen that way. And with a lot of very scary and unfortunate things going on in the world, you know, sometimes I have to have a more serious video, and this is the week for that. So links down below, and please comment, subscribe, share this video, and please use this as a teaching tool. If you know somebody who's struggling with this concept, maybe some of the things I've talked about in this and the definitions I've given can help them get their heads around it. That's really the whole point of my channel. That's what I want people to get out of these things. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, lift heavy, fight the patriarchy, and I'll see you next week. Bye.